Today, we are building two nearly identical budget-focused gaming PCs, creating what we believe to be the best value 1440p gaming configurations of 2025. Now, essentially, both systems are the same. We're just providing a white and black option for those of you with a preference for one or the other. I'll also be testing out a few different cooler options, and please note, none of the hardware featured in this video has been sponsored for the build. We haven't been paid to use any of it. We've simply selected the hardware that we feel is the best for this particular, budget build. But you know, there is one thing we've been paid for. Today's video is brought to you by Insta360 and the new Link 2 4K webcam now available in white. This unit features a high-performance half-inch sensor delivering crisp 4K video with an AI-powered audio algorithm, providing great audio quality via the built-in microphone. Building on the original Link, the Link 2 also has, you guessed it, AI tracking for individuals and groups, as well as gesture control and auto framing. It now also offers modes such as customizable backgrounds and effects, so if you, like me, are sick of the hardware Unboxed studio, you can dip down to your local coffee shop and just hang out and relax. The 4K 30 FPS camera offers excellent video quality even in low light situations, such as this. Nice and dark now. I think I look pretty good on the screen, still nice and clear. So really, for a cost-effective solution, the image quality is amazing and can probably really only be bested by something like a professional digital SLR. The Link 2 is also equipped with a gimbal, making it perfect for demos and presentations. Balin, get out of my presentation. It also pairs perfectly with the new Wave speakerphone. So for more information, please click the link in the video description. Okay, so let's go over all the hardware we'll be using, along with a few backup options depending on availability in your region. And then we're going to throw it all together to show you the finished product. And I am very happy with how these have turned out. We'll also do a few benchmarks, thermal testing, all that sort of stuff. So let's get into it. We'll start with the CPU because the choice here will largely dictate the motherboard and memory combo that you go with. Right now, AMD's AM5 platform is the most attractive option in my opinion, as there are already a good number of Zen 4 and Zen 5 processors available, while Zen 6 will become an option next year, making way for a possible quick and easy upgrade if you want. The best value AM5 processor available right now for gaming, in my opinion, is the Ryzen 5 7500F, which can be had for around $150 US. And if you don't have that model available in your region, the 7600/7600X, they also work well for around $180 US, while you could go as far as the Zen 5 based 9600X, as that's down at around $200 US. Here in Australia though, the 7500F is a particularly amazing deal as you can land one delivered to your door from AliExpress for just $200 Australian. Whereas a part like the 7600, that's going to cost you $320, $345 for the 7600X, or $370 for the 9600X. So given all of those prices, the 7500F is a no-brainer for fellow Aussies. Now it is well worth noting that the 7500F processors from AliExpress do not come with a box cooler, whereas the 7600 purchased here in Australia does include the Wraith Stealth, but again, it does cost $120 more if you buy the 7600 locally. So for that amount of money, you could get yourself a pretty great cooler. Now here locally, basic tower style coolers can be had for as little as $20, so it's a very cheap and easy fix. There's virtually countless options here, and I decided to spend a little bit extra to get something that's high quality in my opinion, works really well, it's easy to install, and it looks great. Because although we are trying to make an affordable gaming PC, it's a bit of a bonus if we can make it look good in the process. So for this, I've gone with the Arctic Freezer 36, but I've opted for the slightly more expensive ARGB version, just to keep Balin happy because he does love his RGB. And we do, of course, have this cooler in both black and white, so you'll get a good look at both of those options. The base model Arctic Freezer 36 costs $40 US, or $50 here in Australia, with the ARGB version costing a very small premium. Now, along with the Arctic Freezer 36, I've picked up a pair of Montech Hyperflow ARGB 360mm IOs, again, in black and white. This particular AO costs $95 US or 110 Aussie, and it has to be said is overkill for a part like the 7500F, but I've included it as a possible upgrade option, and I'll be testing it on not just the 7500F, but also the 9950X 3D. And again, I'll be doing this to provide some options for those of you doing potential upgrades in the future and just give you an idea of whether or not the AIO is worth the extra money for a budget build. And then since we are going with the Ryzen 5 7500F, we will need an AM5 motherboard. And for this, I do recommend an AMD B650 model, as the B850 boards are currently still very expensive, especially here in Australia. Pricing of B850 boards does appear much more competitive over in the US, so as always, it's best to just do your own research here and check pricing in your region. The vast majority of B650/B650E and B850 motherboards are good, so you can't go too wrong here. And since you are likely to be keeping this motherboard for several years, as it does have a good upgrade path, I find it a bit easier to justify spending a bit more here to get a good quality board. That said though, $100 US for a model such as the ASRock B650M HDV M.2 makes perfect sense, and you can purchase that board in black or white, so it's absolutely an option for those of you who just want to spend as little as possible on your motherboard. Though, in that particular example, be aware ASRock has a bit of a history right now of killing X3D CPUs. So if you think there's any chance you may upgrade to one of those in the future, it might be best to skip over ASRock for now because we're not quite sure if they've been able to solve that problem yet or not. Now, great budget alternatives include the MSI Pro B650M-A Wi-Fi, which can be had for $140 US, MSI Pro B650-A Wi-Fi for $150, that's the ATX version, Gigabyte B650 Eagle AX or MSI B650 Edge Wi-Fi for $160 US. Meanwhile, decent B850 boards start at around $170 US, with more capable models priced up around $200. There really are dozens of viable options we could go with here, but for the purpose of these builds, I've selected the MSI B650 Gaming Plus Wi-Fi and Gigabyte B850 Aorus Elite Wi-Fi 7 ICE. I am building ATX systems here, so I have skipped over the more cost-effective micro ATX options, and while the B850 Aorus Elite Wi-Fi 7 ICE is a very good board, it looks amazing, it is a bit pricey at $200 US, it has to be said, but it's also white and will suit our build really well, so that's the primary reason for why we're using it here. But again, research which boards offer the features that you require, and then go with the best pricing in your region. And we do have quite a few videos covering this, and we will shortly, possibly next week, have a complete B850 motherboard test for you. Now, next up, we have to pick some memory. And this was a pretty straightforward task for our build. At least it was. 32GB of DDR5 6000, that's the sweet spot. But the pricing for the lower latency kits has unfortunately skyrocketed over the past week or so. You're now looking at around $180 to $200 US for a CL30 kit, which is really unfortunate because when I started pricing together these components for this build about a month ago now, the pricing was more like $95 US, so it's basically doubled in the last week. Apparently this is because DRAM makers have started to prioritize server DRAM and HBM production, which in turn is limiting the supply of DDR4 and DDR5 DRAM. And that's created a supply and demand issue that's seen prices surge. As a result, the Team Group T-Force Delta RGB DDR5 6000 CL30 memory that I originally selected has jumped up from $95 for a 32GB kit to an eye-watering $200 US. So, although this is a very good memory kit, and I would normally recommend it, based on the current state of things, you might be best off buying the cheapest DDR5 6000 memory you can get your hands on. Now, when it comes to the graphics card, there's really no better choice right now for budget builds than the Radeon RX 9060 XT, preferably the 16GB model. The 8GB cards, though, can be had for $270 US, and some have even gone as low as $250 US, and arguably they start to become pretty good value in the current market at that price. And then you're looking at more like $350 US for the 16GB version, but I think the 30% premium is well worth it for the extra VRAM. And evidence suggests that you'll make that money back when it comes time to sell the card. As for which model you should get, there's a lot of good ones out there. The PowerColor Reaper is a compact dual fan model that's readily available at or below the MSRP, so that's a good model to look out for. But of course, I just recommend going with the cheapest model in your region, as long as it has 16GB of VRAM. Now, next up we have the storage. This one's a bit of a complicated one. There are countless options available here, and we don't really cover storage on the channel all that often. And then you have your various different capacities to choose from as well, which can dictate the price here. I typically recommend that you go with a drive of at least a 2TB capacity. And I've found Team Group's MP33 to be a cheap and reliable drive, costing just $70 US for the 1TB model or $115 for 2TB. It's certainly not the fastest M.2 SSD you'll come across, and it is DRAM-less, but it's also very cheap, and like I said, we've found they work well enough. You could say it's a budget-friendly PCIe 3.0 x 4 M.2 NVMe SSD, offering sequential speeds of up to 1800 MB per second read and 1500 MB per second write. It offers respectable endurance ratings and a 5-year warranty. All of that said though, for slightly more money, Team Group offer the T-Force G50, a PCIe 4.0 model that boosts the sequential read speeds up to 5000 MB per second and the sequential write speeds up to 4500 MB per second, and that's for the 2TB model. The endurance rating has also been significantly increased to 1300 TB written, and you get the same 5-year warranty. The 2TB model costs $130 US, so it's a small $15 premium, and I think the G50 is a better choice. However, for use as a boot drive, I'd typically recommend trying to get a model with DRAM, and there are a few options from Team Group priced between $160 and $170 US, such as the GA Pro, C70 Pro, and Cardia A440. Next, we have the case, and like a lot of components that we've already covered, there's a wide range of choices here with countless viable options. Picking the right case is largely subjective, so again, do your own research on this one, and it is very easy to spend less than $100 US. All of that said, I've decided to spend a bit more and secure the Montech King 95 Pro, as this case has been well received with loads of glowing reviews from professionals, as well as highly positive user feedback. It costs around $150 US for the black version or $170 US for the white version, and of course we do have both of them to show you. Here in Australia though, it is much more competitively priced when compared to what we're seeing over in the US, and I did pick this based on the Australian pricing. The black model costs just 160 Australian dollars, while the white version is 170 Australian. So with entry level, pretty basic, crummy even cases starting at around $60 Australian, I think the Montech King is pretty good value. The King 95 is quite a premium offering, featuring a curved glass design with integrated light strip on the front panel, and there's 6 pre-installed ARGB fans. It's a seriously good looking case for the money, and I have to admit I'm pretty excited to build these systems. As for the power supply, I recommend at least a 750 watt model, but check pricing because it's often very inexpensive to get the next model up. And I've got 2 different power supplies for these systems, one being the Montech Century 2 850 watt, and the other the Colink Regulator 750 watt. The Montech Century 2 850 watt is a good option for the US viewers, priced at just $90 US. It's a great high quality product for the money. Here in Australia though, it's very difficult to find that particular model, and the same 850 watt version costs $180 Australian, so I'd recommend the Colink Regulator, and I use the 1200 watt versions for all of our test systems, and they work very well. But on hand for this build, I have the 750 watt unit, which costs $150 Australian, but I'd actually recommend you look for the 850 watt version, as it's just $10 more. Both the Century 2 and Regulator are 80 plus gold certified, 100% modular power supplies, ATX3 and PCIe 5 compliant, with a single 12 volt high powered 600 watt connector. So either is going to be up to the task, and will no doubt be with you for several system upgrades. Finally, we have the monitor, and while I'll be skipping over peripheral recommendations for this particular build, since we have a channel called Monitors Unboxed, we might as well recommend a good value 27-inch 1440p gaming monitor. For this, we're going to go with the AOC Q27 G40 XMN, a mini LED 180Hz monitor that costs $250 US or $400 Australian. We recommended this monitor because it's a great bang for buck choice for HDR gaming. The 1152 zone backlight offers tight control and high brightness, it's well calibrated, and motion performance is decent at up to 180 Hz. Okay, so getting right to it, here's how each system looks when complete. Though please note, with the white system, it does have a 9070 XT Hellhound White Edition installed in it, because I don't have a white 9060 XT, and this system's been built purely for demonstration purposes, as in to show you how a white version of this build would look. And please note, I'll be doing all of my thermal and gaming tests using the black version, which does have an Asus Prime 9060 XT 16GB installed. So let's see how this system performs using the various cooling options for the CPU. Starting with F125, I've tested this system using both the Ryzen 5 7500F and then a more power-hungry potential upgrade option using the 9950X 3D, and that's a 170 watt part. Looking at the Ryzen 5 7500F first though, we see that the Hyperflow produced the best thermal results, though it was also the loudest, with those three 120mm fans. I should also note that the MSI motherboard was set to the silent PWM mode in the BIOS for all of this testing, and that means all of the coolers were tested using these same settings. Now, although 30 decibels is roughly twice as loud as 28 decibels, the difference between these three coolers to my ear was very minimal, and this is because all three were very quiet, and typically speaking 3 decibels is about the smallest change a person can hear, so it makes sense that all three coolers were much the same in that regard. And this also means that the 7500F worked perfectly well in this test with the box cooler. 70 degrees is a safe operating temperature, though be aware F125 is a relatively light CPU load. So for a very small financial investment, the Freezer 36 does massively improve performance, slightly reducing the operating volume for a massive 18-degree reduction in operating temperature. Now the Hyperflow, while a little bit louder, it was cooler again, reducing the peak CPU temperature to just 44 degrees. Now, when upgrading the CPU from a 65 watt model to a 170 watt model, we start to see the benefits of the larger 360mm AIO. At first, the difference appears less pronounced, as the liquid cooler was just 3 degrees cooler, but the difference between a 30 decibel and 39 decibel operating volume is very noticeable. 39 decibels isn't exactly super loud, but you can clearly hear the fans of the Freezer 36, whereas you could just hear the Hyperflow. Now switching over to a CPU-focused load test with Cinebench, we see that the box cooler is now struggling with the 7500F as temperatures exceed 80 degrees. That said, this is still within the recommended spec, and at no point did I detect thermal throttling, so this cooler was working as intended. But if you spend a little bit of money, you can get much better results, and I would always recommend upgrading to something like the Freezer 36, as this greatly reduces the load temperatures, and in this example, we saw a 23-degree reduction. Then, as expected, the 360mm I/O is overkill for a 65-watt processor, and we saw just a 6-degree reduction with the Hyperflow, and that's an unnecessary improvement really. The Hyperflow performed much better using the 9950X 3D, and despite actually ending up a degree warmer than the Arctic freezer, it was much quieter. Now, for those of you wondering about how the 9060 XT ran in the Montech King 95 Pro case, I'd say it's very much an optimal configuration. When testing with the 9950X 3D installed, we saw slightly better thermals on the GPU with the Hyperflow, though we're talking about a mere 2-degree difference, and that's just because the heat from the CPU is being dumped out of the case. And in terms of performance, this had no real effect. Just lastly, I played a few games, and performance was, again as expected. The 9060 XT was for the most part the primary bottleneck at 1440p, so the results were comparable to what we've shown in our review using the 9800X 3D. Testing with Cyberpunk using the high preset at native 1440p saw over 70 FPS, with frame rates typically around 80 FPS for the indoor sections, which is right in line with our testing with the 9800X 3D for the 9060 XT 16GB review. Of course, you can enable FSR upscaling for even greater performance if you wish. Since we looked at thermals in F125, we might as well check out some FPS performance. Using the high preset at native 1440p, we're looking at an average of around 170 FPS, so amazing performance for those of you with a high refresh rate monitor like the AOC Q27G40XMN. Finally, I had a look at Battlefield 6 performance, and for this one I did use the low quality settings at native 1440p, as this is how I prefer to play shooters. And these quality settings allowed for an average of 120 FPS, whereas the high quality preset dropped us down to about 90 FPS. Anyway, in my opinion, the game played really well, and although we are looking at around 70% utilization for the 7500F, performance was very smooth. Well, there you have it. I love these two systems. I don't know which one of the two I would pick. The white is pretty stunning. The RGB glows nicely in there. Balin, which one do you prefer of the two? Let the people know.
The white one's pretty good.
You're leaning, Valen's also leaning towards the white one though. The black red, black white, or black blue, or any other combo there all looks good in my opinion. So I'm not sure. I have to say though, the Montech King 95 Pro, again, not sponsored. We picked up these cases ourselves, and yeah, we think they're absolutely fantastic. Very easy to build in. I think there's a fair bit of hype around these based on the reviews and user feedback that I was seeing. It looked quite hyped, but I get it because they're not overly expensive. Like I said, around 150 Australian dollars, and you get all of the ARGB fans included. They're all wired into a hub, so all the ARGB wiring or the RGB wiring is taken care of for you, along with all the fan wiring. So installation was a breeze. I honestly don't think I have ever built two systems that look this good that were this quick and easy to put together. So, I mean, there's some pretty great value in that, I think. And then, we've gone with the 360mm AO, the Hyperflow, because they look awesome. I'll be honest. It's the main reason why we're using them for this particular build is overkill. The Arctic Freezer 36, if you get the ARGB version or otherwise, is a perfectly fine solution. It was pretty quiet, worked well. And then, as I said, for the motherboards, both boards we went with, we were really happy with. They work exceptionally well, but there are cheaper options, and there is, a massive range of B650 and B850 motherboards. And you can go to the X series as well if you want, but I'd probably recommend for most regions, look at B650. Those boards are running out now. Production runs have ended, so supply will start to shrink up, and then the prices will go back up. But at the moment, they're pretty well priced here in Australia. And then we have the Team Group T-Force memory. Yeah, we go from one pricing on B650, not too bad right now. Pricing on premium DDR5 6000 memory, very bad. So unfortunately, like I said, it was about $95 US for a 32GB kit when I got my hands on them. Yeah, they're just over double that now. So I'm not really quite sure what you do with that, whether you just take the pain on that one or just try and find some of the lesser known brands have some better deals available. I don't know how long they're going to be around for, so maybe check that out. And then the SSDs, we used the G50 in this one and the MP33 in that one. Can't really tell the difference for the testing we did. They both are very responsive and work well, but we haven't filled them up yet and worked them out a fair bit, so that can slow them down. Anyway, really, I'm not just saying it, I am quite impressed with how these builds turned out. And again, I can't stress how easy they were to just stick together. I think I put each system fully built, complete, well within half an hour. And then changing into the AIOs, upgrading to those, very easy. Montech uses the standard AMD retention mechanism there. So or the mounting hardware rather, pops straight on, really easy. 2 screws done up, and then there's like 2 cables to connect, and there you go. The all-in-one liquid cooler is installed. So yeah, great performance, nice quiet systems that look fantastic, and they won't break the bank. So I'm particularly excited about these two. Let me know what you guys think about them, and if this is a series you'd like to see us do at different price points, different form factors, and all that sort of stuff. Let me know. Maybe we could even do like some Intel value system versus AMD value system, check power consumption thermals, and see if there really is much difference between the two. But anyway, and yeah, I guess the other cool thing about these being AM5 is that, Zen 6 next year, you could upgrade the CPU. Maybe Zen 7, no idea about that one, but rumors are suggesting you could. So there is pretty good upgrade potential for these systems. We've got some good power supplies, good cooling. So really, as it is, this computer, you could pretty well keep for the next 5 or 6 years and just upgrade stuff like the CPU and probably the GPU. But anyway, that is going to do it for this video. Let me know what you thought about it. Of course, let me know what you think about my new 2 favorite budget systems. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. I'm your host, Steve. See you again next time.